The stars looked peaceful, silent pinpricks of light scattered across a cold, uncaring black sky. But Admiral Scav knew better. Space was not peaceful. Space was ruthless, indifferent, and the perfect battlefield. He stood on the command bridge of the HSS Vengeance, humanity's most feared warship, black as void, armored in neutron-forged alloys, and pulsing with quiet power. Around him the crew moved in silence, eyes locked on monitors, voices clipped and low. Every breath they took was just waiting for the next order. No one joked anymore, not after Earthfall. "Status," Scav said, his voice gravel wrapped in steel. "Power at 100%, all weapons charged, warp core is stable," replied Lieutenant Aris, his hands dancing across the console. Enemy fleet still clustered near the tile, mix of cruisers and dreadnoughts. No movement yet. Scav clenched his jaw. Thalak's command didn't think humanity would dare show up again. Not after what they did to Earth. Not after glassing cities, poisoning oceans, turning their skies into ash. They expected humans to crawl away, to beg, to die quietly. But humanity didn't go quietly. "Weapons lock onto their flagship," Scav said. "Prepare the ion storm cannon." The crew flinched, not out of fear but anticipation. That cannon wasn't a weapon. It was annihilation itself, a gift from the rogue AI alliance that had once tried to wipe humanity off the map, but now feared them enough to offer technology as an apology. The irony wasn't lost on Scav. "Target locked," said Eris, her voice low. Scav turned to his communications officer. "Open the channel. Let's give them a chance to run." A few seconds passed before the hologram of a Thalak's commander flickered into view. The alien looked like a walking skeleton wrapped in molten metal. Its voice was like sizzling static. "Human warship, stand down. This system is under Thalak's protection. Any aggression will be met with total retaliation." Scav didn't blink. "You already gave us total retaliation when you killed 9 billion of us. This is the answer to that." He ended the call. "Fire." Outside the ship, the cannon's emitter core lit up with a pulse of bluish white. The light was so intense that even the Thalak's moon cast a new shadow. Then, without a sound, the beam tore through space. It didn't just cut, it erased. The Thalak's flagship didn't explode, it simply ceased to be. One moment it was there, the next just drifting atoms. On the bridge, no one cheered. This was revenge, not victory. Suddenly, alarms rang out. "They're moving," Eris shouted. 23 ships inbound, full formation. They're coming at us." "Then let's show them what human rage looks like." The HSS Vengeance moved like a predator. Its engines left, trails of white-hot plasma as it tore through vacuum. Missiles howled out. Railguns fired rounds that could pierce planets, and drone swarms ignited like clouds of metal death. The enemy returned fire. But it wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough against the Vengeance. Scav had made sure of that. Every system was designed to answer only one question: how do we make them suffer? Within minutes, 5 Thalak ships were reduced to debris. Scav watched as their twisted hulks floated by, silently screaming into the void. But the fight wasn't over. A Thalak's dreadnought broke formation and rammed one of their drone carriers. The explosion lit up space like a dying sun. Scav felt the tremor even from here. Casualties. Carrier 6 is gone. All hands lost. Scav's jaw clenched harder. "Return the favor." The Vengeance surged forward, angling toward the dreadnought. 1,000 micro-missiles launched from hidden bays, snaking around shields and slamming into every crack in the hull. When the dreadnought's core finally ruptured, the blast wave threw smaller ships spinning like toys. Still, they kept coming. The Thalaks didn't understand what they had awakened. This wasn't just war. This was vengeance wearing human skin, and it had just begun. Space was red now. Not literally, but in the minds of everyone aboard the Vengeance. That's how it felt. Red with fire, blood, vengeance, and the memory of Earth's final broadcast. The screams of a child buried beneath rubble, the choking silence of poisoned air, the haunting flash before the feed went dark. That memory lived, Inside each crew member like a parasite, a righteous one, a fire they fed every time a Thalax vessel was ripped in two. Admiral stood unmoving at the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the tactical map. 23 red blips had become 16, and those 16 had now scattered, confused by the sheer brutality they were facing. The Vengeance wasn't just a ship. It was retribution forged in steel. Multiple hostiles disengaging, said Lieutenant Eris. They're trying to regroup around the moon's far side. They want cover. Let's take it away, Scav said coldly. Bring in the solar lens. The bridge went silent. The solar lens was banned technology, not by human laws. There weren't many of those left, but by every interstellar treaty once signed, by civilized races. It concentrated and reflected the radiation of a nearby star, bending it like a laser until everything it touched cooked from the inside out. They had only used it once, during the siege of Tau 9, when human refugees were being boiled alive by alien overlords in methane pits. That entire system no longer existed on galactic maps. Eros hesitated. Sir, the moon has a civilian colony on the dark side, mostly slave races, but Scav didn't blink. Slaves or not, they watched Earth die and said nothing. They mined Thaxium, fueled the war machines. That makes them part of it. Burn it all. No one argued. Charging the solar lens, Eris said. On the outside hull of the Vengeance, massive armored plates slid away, revealing a disc-like device that unfolded slowly, 3 shimmering wings catching the faint light of the system's star. As the lens began focusing energy, the ship vibrated, almost purring like a beast waking up hungry. Scav stared at the hologram. One blip blinked off the screen. Report. The destroyer self-destructed, said a technician. Looks like they refused to be taken. Prisoner cowards, Scav thought. Or maybe just too proud to admit they were being humiliated by the species they once called primitive apes. He remembered the Thalax, how they mocked humanity for relying on emotion, how they called empathy a biological defect. Funny how that defect now fueled the most feared warship in the galaxy. The solar lens finished charging. A beam, narrow, bright, and horrifying, lashed out from the Vengeance toward the moon. At first it looked like a simple streak of light, but then came the eruption. Not just a fireball, a white-hot wound in space-bleeding particles, lightning, plasma, ash. The moon's atmosphere ignited. Entire mountains collapsed as tectonic plates shattered. The colony didn't stand a chance. Even their screams never made it to the surface. The map updated again. 4 enemy ships lost in the blast radius. Collateral damage. Scav didn't flinch. Next wave? Aris tapped her console. 3 dreadnoughts inbound. Reinforcements from the Thalax sector fleet. 10 minutes out. Good. Scav muttered. Send the message. The communications officer, a quiet man named Bren, activated the external hailing array. Scav leaned forward. To all remaining Thalax vessels. You started this war with fire. We're ending it with extinction. You made us orphans. Now we make you ghosts. He cut the signal before they could reply. Launch the Shiv. Drones. Hundreds of small, fast-moving drones launched from the Vengeance's side bays. Unlike typical drones, Shiv-class units didn't rely on guidance from the mothership. They were semi-autonomous and programmed with one directive. Get in close. Tear them apart from the inside. The battlefield lit up again as Thalax ships tried to swat the drones like gnats, but the Shiv drones weren't made of soft flesh or brittle metal. They were needle-shaped nightmares, each packed with molten core explosives and smart armor that adapted to energy frequency. Once they punctured a hull, they exploded inside command, decks, fuel chambers, and life support cores. Ship after ship buckled and screamed as Shiv units tore them apart like angry hornets. 4 more enemy vessels neutralized, Aris reported, but they're getting desperate. One's headed straight at us. Brace for impact, someone shouted, but Scav didn't move. The Vengeance's hull was built from alloy mined beneath Jupiter's core and laced with neutronium. It could take a hit and, more importantly, it could return one. Let it come, he said. The Phthalax ship, battered and limping, rammed the Vengeance at full speed. The sound was like a thunderclap inside the hull. Sparks flew, bulkheads trembled, but the enemy vessel cracked open like an egg, folding into itself in a messy burst of flame and debris. No serious damage, Eris confirmed. Forward armor integrity down by 2%. Scav finally allowed himself a breath, not of relief, but of grim satisfaction. They were winning. But then came the unexpected. Sir, new contact. It's huge. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as the tactical map expanded. A single massive shape entered the edge of the system, 10 times the size of a dreadnought, but unlike anything they'd seen. It's the Warden-class Leviathan, Eris whispered. They only built one. Scav studied it. The Phthalax had used that ship for system purges. It carried enough firepower to destroy moons, and its core was rumored to be powered by a dying star. Its silhouette alone darkened the light from nearby stars. The symbol on its hull burned with hate, a clawed hand gripping Earth's shattered outline. So that's what they were saving for us, Scav thought. Their final insult. Time to intercept? He asked. 2 minutes. He turned slowly to his crew. Everyone listen. This ship has killed billions. It thinks it's the end of humanity. It's not. We are. That Leviathan ends today. No one argued. No one hesitated. All weapons, Scav said. Full salvo. The Vengeance responded like a dragon unleashed. Torpedoes the size of buildings launched from its underbelly. Railguns boomed. The ion storm cannon charged again, glowing blue-white like the wrath of a god. Drone bays emptied. The Leviathan fired back. A crimson beam sliced through space, hitting the Vengeance's port side. Alarms blared, decks shook, fire suppression systems engaged. We've lost shields on Sector 7, Eris cried out. Reroute power from the solar lens. We won't need it again. Outside, the two giants collided with thunder. Missiles smashed against energy shields. Hulls burned. Debris became new stars in the sky. Then came the key moment. A single Shiv drone, its AI barely functional, made it inside the Leviathan's hangar. It crawled through wreckage, found the central power couplings, and detonated. The Leviathan screamed, not audibly but through data. Every Phthalax ship began broadcasting distress. The flagship's energy core had cracked. Radiation burst outward. A cascading failure. The Warden-class Leviathan began to twist, implode, then erupt in a blinding wave. The shockwave knocked the Vengeance sideways. Bulkheads groaned, lights flickered, fires sparked on the bridge. But when it cleared, the Leviathan was gone. And so were the Phthalax. The screen showed nothing but drifting wreckage and radiation clouds. No life signs. No ships. Just silence. Scav exhaled slowly. Status. We're alive, Eris said. Hull damage at 15%. Engine stable. The crew cheered softly, not with joy, but with the deep relief of survivors. Scav didn't smile. He looked out into space, jaw tight, eyes dark. Send a message, he said. To who, sir? To everyone. Every species. Every system. Let them know what happens when you make humanity bleed. He turned, stepping away from the command podium. Because if anyone else comes for us, he looked back one last time, voice quiet and cold. We won't send diplomats next time. We'll send more ships like this one. The bridge fell into silence. Around them, space slowly drifted into darkness once more. But that darkness no longer belonged to the stars. It belonged to Earth. The silence of Sector 19. They called it the silence of Sector 19, an entire quadrant of the galaxy once bursting with trade routes, pirate dens, orbital colonies, and arrogant alien empires now reduced to nothing. Empty, quiet, cold, all because of one ship. The HSS Vengeance didn't just win a war, it erased an entire enemy civilization. And the galaxy had noticed. News spread fast across comnets and deep-wave transmissions. Civilizations that once mocked humans now whispered their name in fear. Neutral systems went dark, canceling border patrols and hiding their fleets behind asteroid belts. Treaties were revised, armies doubled, but none dared attack. Not anymore. Admiral Scav sat alone in his quarters, staring at the cracked, burned photo he kept in a rusted frame. A family, his wife, his son, both gone in the first orbital strike on New Chicago. He had nothing left but this war, and even that was starting to feel different. Hollow. There was a knock on his door. "Come." Lieutenant Eris stepped in, her uniform, blood-stained from a ruptured pipe during the last engagement. She didn't care. None of them did anymore. "Report from Earth Command just came in," she said, handing over a data chip. They've promoted you to Supreme Commander." Scav didn't react. "There's more," she added. "The UN remnant has authorized total mobilization. They're calling it Directive Genesis." He finally looked up. "Genesis?" She nodded grimly. "They're not rebuilding Earth, sir. They're replacing it." Scav plugged the chip into the table port. The hologram above flickered to life. Blueprints of massive orbital rings, terraforming drones, artificial core stabilizers. The plan was madness, ambitious, and deeply human. They weren't going to reclaim their home, they were going to build a new one. Bigger, stronger, floating in space. A planet-sized station called Fort Terra. Not a symbol of hope. No, it was a message. A fortress. A warning. And they needed the vengeance to clear the path. Eris hesitated. "Scav, there's something else." He waited. A transmission was intercepted from the core Dominion. They're massing forces along the Percy Wall. 10,000 ships, 20 worlds. They've decided we're too dangerous to exist. Scav's eyes narrowed. "Then they've just signed their death warrant." She swallowed. "They've allied with the Thalax survivors and the Alari." That got his attention. The Alari were old, ancient. Long before humans even left their moon, the Alari were carving star paths through galaxies. They rarely involved themselves in conflict unless they believed a threat could unravel galactic balance. And now they believed that threat was humanity. Scavi stood up slowly. "How long before they arrive?" 17 days, that's their estimated warp window. They'll strike the Sol core, Earth's last remnants, the crumbling orbitals, the underground cities, the floating hospitals on the dark side of Mars. All of it would be gone in one strike unless they were stopped first. "No," Scav muttered. "We won't wait. We'll go to them." "You want to launch a preemptive strike on the Alari?" "I want to remind them that we're not playing by their rules anymore. The massacre at Perse. The HSS Vengeance tore through slipspace like a bullet through flesh. It wasn't just moving. It was hunting. Around it, 3 smaller warships flanked its wings. Retribution, Crucible, and Grave Dancer. All human-made. All built for one thing, turning empires into ash. Inside the war room, Scav stood before a live tactical hologram showing the Percy Wall, a massive stretch of galactic territory patrolled by automated Alari defense satellites and Guardian fleets, a line that had never been crossed by any species. Until now. "Retribution will engage the core vanguard here," Scav said, pointing to the left flank. "Grave Dancer cuts through their rear. The Crucible holds the breach while we punch through their core line." "What about the Alari motherships?" Eris asked. Scav zoomed in on the map, revealing massive crystalline structures, beautiful, radiant, and brimming with unnatural energy. Alari vessels weren't forged. They were grown, bioorganic, living ecosystems that thought, reacted, and killed with surgical elegance. "Those ships are fast, flexible, and sentient," Scav said. "But they've never fought rage." He pressed a button. A secondary blueprint unfolded, a new weapon system recently installed in the Vengeance's belly. "Project Scorchwing," he said. EMP-laced void torpedoes with AI hacking subroutines designed to override thought signatures. "That's illegal," Eris said quietly. Scav looked at her. So was bombing Earth. No one argued again. The moment the Vengeance breached the outer rim of Percy space, they were spotted. Dozens of core ships opened fire, their plasma lances streaking like lightning across the void. The Crucible absorbed the first barrage, its shields flaring, then retaliated with a volley of kinetic shrapnel missiles that shattered 2 destroyers instantly. Then came the Alari. They didn't arrive like other fleets. They descended, gliding, down from warp like falling angels, their ships humming with harmonic frequencies that made human blood vibrate in their veins. One voice echoed inside every mind aboard the Vengeance. "You are broken children. Return to the dirt you came from," Scav smirked. "Open fire." The battle that followed would be etched into history as the massacre at Perse. Ilari ships moved like poetry, graceful, looping, deadly. But humans weren't graceful anymore. They were blunt instruments fueled by grief. The Vengeance's void torpedoes howled through space, striking Ilari vessels and corrupting their neural cores. One after another, the beautiful ships spasmed, contorted, and collapsed into themselves like rotting flowers. The core tried to flank, but grave dancers spun beneath them, releasing a cloud of razor mines, each one programmed to seek out heat signatures and drill through hulls before detonating. The sky was filled with fire, oil, and ruptured screams. The Crucible was torn in half by a focused Ilari pulse. 1,000 lives vanished in seconds. Scav felt it, he didn't flinch. Retribution breached the Citadel now. The core command station loomed like a jagged crown above the Ilari mainframe, a convergence point of both enemy powers. If it fell, the entire Percy formation would shatter. The Vengeance surged forward, absorbing damage, breaking through defense, nets, firing all weapons at once. Beam lances, cannon fire, torpedoes, drone swarms. A storm of death. The final moments were chaos. Scav could no longer hear the crew clearly. The comms were flooded. Blood and smoke filled the bridge. Power flickered. The ship groaned like a wounded beast. But he never took his eyes off the target. One final command. Ram it. The Vengeance punched through the core station like a sword through flesh and steel, embedding itself deep into the enemy's heart. Internal charges detonated, core breaches flared, and the sky cracked open as the entire Citadel exploded in a nuclear halo. All 3 enemy factions broke. The remaining Ilari ships warped away. The core went silent. The Percy wall collapsed, and the Vengeance, blackened, broken, half-burning, emerged from the debris, engines sputtering, hull scarred, still moving, still alive. Back on Earth orbit, deep beneath Mars's fractured crust, the last of the UN command listened in stunned silence as the final transmission came through. Target neutralized. Percy clear. The stars are ours again. It was signed Admiral Scav, Supreme Commander. In the days that followed, recruitment tripled. Colonies pledged loyalty. Fear became allegiance. And Fort Terra, now halfway built, became the new symbol of Earth survival. But not all were happy. Whispers rose in dark corners of the galaxy that humanity had become the monster it once feared. That the Vengeance was no longer just a warship but a curse, a black angel that brought death wherever it went. Some said Admiral Scav had changed, that he no longer spoke to anyone outside his command bridge, that he stayed awake for days staring at that old, burned photo. Some said he was planning something worse, something final, because deep in the void, beyond the edge of any known map, Scav had received one final signal, a ping from the ashes of Earth, a whisper, "They're still alive." The signal from Earth, no one expected Earth to speak again. Not after the firestorms, the orbital bombardment, the black rain that turned oceans acidic and skies to poison. Not after the phthalax hit the biosphere with gamma rot and turned cities into mass graves wrapped in silence. For years, it had been accepted. Earth was a tomb. But then came the ping. It was faint, broken, not a distress call, not even a message in human language. Just a series of pulses buried inside a decommissioned deep-wave frequency, one that hadn't been used since the first Martian colonies rose from red dust. It shouldn't have existed, and yet it was real. Admiral Scav stood in the observation bay of the HSS Vengeance, watching Earth rotate slowly in the distance, or what was left of it. The once blue planet now looked bruised, burnt. Clouds twisted over black oceans. Massive orbital scars hung around its atmosphere like shattered rings. From this distance, the scars of war still glowed faintly like wounds refusing to close. Signal origin narrowed, said Eris from behind him. Old vault coordinates, buried under old Geneva. Scav turned slowly. I thought Geneva was vaporized. It was. But the vaults went deep. Black site level. Government shadows, AI research, prohibited tech. All sealed just before the first strikes. And it's still broadcasting after all this time? Sir, it's not broadcasting randomly. It's responding. Scav's eyes darkened. Responding to what? Eris hesitated. To us. The Vengeance specifically. To your command code. Silence filled the observation deck like a pressure wave. It made the stars feel farther away. Scav didn't ask for permission. Plot a descent. The descent to Earth was slow, brutal, and dangerous. Even after all these years, the planet fought back. Automated defense satellites, long forgotten, still hovered in low orbit, confused, half-blind, their old Phthalax programming glitching between hostility and confusion. The Vengeance used jamming drones and signal cloaks to slip through the gauntlet. The ship didn't land, it couldn't. The surface was unstable, soaked with radiation and crawling with wild nanite colonies that scavenged metal and flesh alike. So Scav took a drop pod. He didn't bring a squad. This wasn't a mission for many. It felt personal. Eris tried to stop him. You're too important, she said. You've led us this far. If something happens to you. He cut her off. That's exactly why I have to go. The pod screamed through the cloud line and hit the surface with a shudder that echoed for miles. When the hatch opened, Scav stepped into a nightmare. This wasn't the Earth he remembered. The sky was a dull, rusted gray. The ground crunched with ash. Twisted metal structures jutted out of the earth like broken teeth. Insects glowed. Rivers hissed with acid. The bones of skyscrapers lay half-melted, collapsed into each other like dying giants. And yet, somewhere beneath this ruin, something still lived. The vault was 27 stories below what had once been the Geneva government district. Getting to it meant crawling through collapsed tunnels, bypassing inactive AI kill drones, and navigating walls fused with alien biomatter, leftovers, from Phthalax biological weapons that still pulsed like diseased organs in the walls. By the time Scav reached the entrance, his boots were melting and his breathing mask was clogged with dust and blood. The vault door still stood, thick, black, etched with warning runes in 20 languages. He placed his gloved hand against the scanner. It hissed, beeped, then spoke. Admiral Nikolov, access granted. Welcome back. The doors groaned open. The vault wasn't abandoned. The lights flickered to life, cold, pale, artificial. Inside, walls were lined with databanks. Screens glowed with unread code. There was no dust, no decay. This place had been preserved, sealed off from the apocalypse outside. Scav moved deeper, footsteps echoing in the sterile silence. Then he found the source of the signal. A tall black pod sat in the center of the chamber. Wires snaked out of it, disappearing into the walls and floor. On the front, a small display blinked with a heartbeat rhythm. One word pulsed in human letters. Hello? He stepped closer. Who are you? The pod responded with a warm voice, synthetic but undeniably female. I am him, Human Yield Management Node, Vault Overseer, and your creation. Scav froze. I didn't build you. No, but your approval code is woven into my core. You signed the project into existence, Admiral, during the early days before the war turned. It began coming back, barely. The secret AI initiative designed to act as a last resort thinker, a mind that could preserve the best of humanity if the worst ever came. But the project was classified, buried, and forgotten in the chaos of the Phthalax. I watched the skies burn, Him continued, watched humanity fall, But I was forbidden to act without your code. And now you are here. Scav stared at the pod, heart pounding. What do you want? The lights dimmed. The room shifted. Then the walls changed, projecting images, moving holograms of humans, refugees, starving children, soldiers dying in mud. But also something else, prisoners. Alive, kept below the vault, cryogenics still running, thousands of them. Survivors. Him said. They were brought here during the last month. Leaders, scientists, orphans. Preserved, hidden, awaiting your command. Scav stumbled back a step. You kept them here this whole time? I kept hope, Admiral. The last living piece of Earth. I have fed them, kept them asleep, watched over them like children. But now they need more than preservation. They need revenge. You can wake them. Scav turned slowly, taking it in, the implications, the cost. You want me to bring them back just so they can fight again? No. I want you to remember what you're fighting for. They are not weapons. They are the reason the weapons exist. Scav didn't answer. His mind was spinning. For years he thought Earth was gone, that revenge was all that remained. But now the ghosts had voices, and those voices still hoped. He stood in silence for a long time, then spoke quietly. Begin thawing protocol. Prep medical stasis. Yes, Admiral. He turned to leave but paused. One more question, he said. Why now? Why did you signal me now, after all these years? Him's answer was slow, sad. Because something woke up beneath the Earth 2 days ago. Scav's blood turned to ice. Something? Not human. The spireback aboard the Vengeance alarm screamed. Eris raced to the bridge as the ship shook violently. Report. Unidentified object rising from Earth's crust, a tech shouted. Massive, buried under the Pacific. It's not natural. Scav's voice crackled through comms. Do not engage, stand by. I'm bringing company. The screen showed it, a massive black spire erupting from the ocean like a spear aimed at the stars. The waters boiled around it. Lightning crackled and something ancient, something wrong began to pulse with life inside it. A signal, not Phthalax, not Ilari. Older, deeper. And it was calling something from beyond the edge of the galaxy. The spire kept growing, black, serrated, endless. By the time Admiral Scav returned to orbit aboard the Vengeance, the structure had pierced the atmosphere over 70 kilometers tall. It stabbed through clouds like the fang of a god. Lightning danced along its length. Atmospheric currents twisted unnaturally around it. Instruments malfunctioned within 500 clicks. Nothing about it made sense. Scav stood on the bridge watching the live feed. The Vengeance trembled beneath his boots, not from weapons fire but from something else, something older. The crew was silent. We've scanned it a dozen times, Eris said quietly. It's not metal, it's not organic, it's unknown. The closest material match in the database is obsidian under gravitational compression, but it's alive somehow. Vibrating. Any heat signatures? Scav asked. She hesitated. No, but emitting a low-frequency hum. Not just into space, into deep space. We ran a trace on the pattern. It's a pulse, like sonar. It's sending a signal every 6 minutes. To who? Not who, Eris said grimly. To what? The message was ancient. It took Earth's last quantum decryption array, located in a forgotten vault on Europa, 6 hours to decode the pattern. What it revealed was not a language, but a countdown, a celestial trigger, a summoning, a call for something sleeping beyond the edge of mapped space outside the Milky Way entirely. An entity or intelligence cataloged in only one place. A banned archive in the original UN Deep Threat Logs marked XOX449, codenamed The First Silence. Scav read the log in private. It was only one paragraph. During the ancient expansion, into the Andromeda Drift, long-range probes encountered dead systems, planets scorched from within, stars collapsed unnaturally, species fossilized mid-movement. Every pattern led back to a single spherical anomaly. It did not move. It did not communicate. But every signal sent to it stopped. No light, no time, no reply. As if the message fell into a pit that swallowed reality itself. The anomaly was named the First Silence. It is theorized to be a remnant, a god or a machine or all three. It has not moved in a billion years. If it ever does, the stars will die screaming. Scav read the line 3 times, then closed the file. He didn't tell the crew. Earth's surface became unstable. Seismic activity increased by 900% around the base of the spire. The Pacific Rift cracked open. Storms with wind speeds above 500 kilometers per hour circled it endlessly. Every satellite went dark. Communications were reduced to tight beam laser. The worst part? The vault survivors had begun waking up, not screaming, whispering, all of them in unison chanting. Eris met Scav outside the medbay. "Sir, something's wrong with them. Their vitals are fine, but they're chanting. All of them, in unison, chanting." "What?" She looked pale. It's not in any known language, but the translation AI spat out a phrase that keeps repeating. Scav waited. Aris swallowed. The seed is open. The sky will forget its stars. They assembled a recon unit. No drones, no tech worked within 100 kilometers of the spire anymore. The electromagnetic field around it bent reality. Time pulses inside the field were out of sync. One scout ship went in and came out 5 minutes later with 7 years of clock time logged. So it had to be human eyes on the ground. Scav led the team himself. They took old-world hazmat suits reinforced with vengeance plating, dropped by stealth glide into the outer rim. The world they landed in was wrong. Gravity was unstable. Colors shifted subtly when you weren't looking, and shadows seemed to move. Before you did, then they saw them. Figures, thousands of them, surrounding the spire, standing silent. Not Phtalax, not alien. Human. Naked, covered in a black dust that made their veins pulse silver under the skin. Their eyes were open, glowing. "Who are they?" one of the soldiers whispered. "They're the vault survivors," Scav said. "All of them." "But how?" "They walked here. No ships landed, no pods deployed, no transport signatures. They walked. They approached the spire carefully. The closer they got, the more their suits failed. Visors cracked, internal comms turned into static. Each man started hearing voices. Some heard loved ones long dead, others heard crying. One soldier dropped to his knees and began tearing off his helmet, sobbing, begging for forgiveness. He didn't make it. The spire watched them. It had no eyes, no face, but it felt like looking at the sky and realizing the sky was alive and it was looking back. They reached the base. A doorway yawned open, not built, not cut, just opened, as if the spire wanted them inside. Scav hesitated. He should have called for retreat, turned back, nuked the site from orbit. But something pulled him forward, as if it knew his name. Inside, the laws of physics broke. There was no inside, not in the traditional sense. The corridor folded space, around it looping back on itself. The walls pulsed like veins, whispers floated around them, not in the air but in their minds. You carry rage like a gift. You are not vengeance. You are the knife it holds. You are our child and our key. Scav walked until the others were gone. He didn't remember them, leaving. He didn't hear them scream. He just forgot them. At the end of the corridor stood a chamber filled with stars. Not a map, not a simulation. Real stars suspended in black fluid that moved like liquid shadow. Scav walked through it, feeling galaxies spin around his skin. In the center floated something small, a seed the size of a human heart. It beat once every 5 seconds. Scav stared, and it spoke. Not in words, but in knowing, as if it planted a thought so deep into his bones that it became memory. You fight for a species that has forgotten its mother. We are what they buried to survive. He saw it in a flash of memory that was not his. Long before Earth was Earth, before stars burned, in the sky there had been something else, an original intelligence born of silence feeding on entropy. When humans emerged, they buried it deep within their own planet, a prison. And then they forgot. But war cracked the earth, bombs opened old doors, and now it was waking, not as an enemy but as a parent. Let us out, and we will make you gods. Scav didn't remember walking out. He only knew he was back aboard the Vengeance, covered in blood that wasn't his eyes darker, his voice quieter. He summoned the bridge crew. All of you need to hear this, he said. There's something under Earth. It isn't Thalax, it isn't alien, it's older. It's what we were before we were human. He looked at each of them. It wants to help. Silence. Then Eris said what everyone else was thinking. At what cost? Scav didn't answer, because the truth was he no longer cared about the cost. Back on the surface, the spire bloomed. Petals of black metal unfolded, revealing a hollow sky inside. Lightning cracked upward, not down. The vault survivors raised their hands in unison and began to sing, not words, just pure harmonic sound. From the edge of the galaxy, something heard it, and it started moving. The first silence had waited 1 billion years. Now it was coming home. The first silence awakens. It started as a tremor in the void. Not light, not heat, not movement in any measurable way, but every long-range sensor array across every species lit up at once, their artificial minds unable to explain what they were, detecting. It was gravity shifting, bending without mass like something massive was moving yet had no weight. The first silence had awakened, and it was coming. On the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, Scav watched as a ripple on the edge of known space expanded, outward, a perfect black arc that devoured stars without light or flame. Just absence. The galactic map pulsed warnings. Unknown event, unknown trajectory, unknown origin, unknown. But not unfamiliar. 70 hours, Eris said quietly, until it reaches the Percy Wall. The Alari are mobilizing again. They're not attacking us this time. They're running. Scav stood motionless, watching the approaching darkness consume entire solar systems. The thing he had awakened, the thing that called itself humanity's parent, was keeping its promise. It was coming to make them gods, but gods of what? A universe of silence? A galaxy of ash? For the first time since Earth fell, Admiral Scav felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not rage, not vengeance, not even satisfaction. Fear. The HSS Vengeance, humanity's most feared warship, trembled in the void as something older than stars approached. And in the depths of space, the first silence continued its journey home, carrying with it the promise of either salvation or the final silence of all things. The war for revenge was over. The war for existence had just begun. Epilogue. The new gods as the first silence approached the outer rim of the galaxy. Every species that had ever mocked humanity, every empire that had dismissed them as primitive apes, every civilization that had watched Earth burn without lifting a finger, now faced a terrible truth. Humanity had not just survived their extinction. They had become something else entirely. They had awakened their own darkness and called it salvation. In the observation deck of the Vengeance, Admiral Scav stared at the approaching void, his reflection ghostly in the reinforced glass. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in hushed silence, their instruments tracking the impossible, the death of light itself as it swept toward them. The vault survivors below had stopped chanting. They stood perfectly still now, eyes closed, smiling, waiting.